Welcome, everyone. I'm Jesse Mogul, and thank you for tuning in to the American Contingency Podcast. Here at AmCon, we're a united nationwide community of steadfast Americans ready to face any challenge that comes our way. Our mission is to inform you by equipping you with the knowledge and training you need to prepare for any man-made or natural disaster. Through active participation in our community, you'll have the opportunity to grow by learning from others' experiences and sharing your own. Together, we build resilience and strength through shared knowledge and mutual support. And as always, it's an honor and a privilege to have you here for the amount of time I will end up allotting for the show. I just got back from the Southeast American Contingency Adventure Challenge, and it was absolutely fantastic. I can't say enough about how much I enjoyed having an opportunity to see people who previously were just usernames on our membership site. Seeing Denny G, our training coordinator, and actually getting to meet him in person, that was a surprise because he's in the North region. So I wasn't expecting to be able to lock face-to-face with him and be able to actually shake his hand and get to know him a little bit better, and that was super awesome. And from Mario Q, who's been on the show before, back I think in the single digits, back when we first started this whole rigmarole, to so many different people, that it was absolutely fascinating, and I cannot speak enough about the power that comes from connecting with other people in the American contingency community face-to-face. That would be the highlight if I were to say that I could just pull out one particular one. And we're getting to the Adventure Challenge part. In American Contingency, we really discuss, in fact, we highlight, we pinpoint on multiple podcasts, in the blogs, on the membership site, how important it is to go from the virtual world to the IRL, in real life world with one another, and to actually be able to meet and get to know and learn from. There is an energy, there is a communication opportunity that is second to none when it comes to face-to-face in front of somebody else, having a chance to just get to know them better, being curious about them, they're being curious about you, and it's just a fascinating experience. So for those of you who are members or thinking about becoming members, I just would highlight that if you feel that American Contingency is lacking something, I would look in the mirror and ask yourself, well, where are you participating the most? Is it online? Is it in real life? Are you sharing your knowledge? Are other people sharing their knowledge with you? This is a living, breathing organism that we have created over here. This isn't Facebook or Twitter or any of those other social media platforms where you can just go on, say your piece, go into the comments, do whatever you're going to do there, and then walk away and be like, yeah, cool, I feel like I participated today. No, there is a lot more to us, and it comes from these in real life experiences like the Adventure Challenge, which is being done in all 6 regions of the United States. The regions we have at least dictated: North, Northeast, Northwest, South, Southeast, and Southwest. And we're going to have Deck on soon, and he's going to talk about the Northeast Challenge. I'm here to discuss the Southeast Challenge. And I went in as a novice because I don't have a lot of these skills in my backpack of skills of life. At least I didn't think I had a lot of these skills. Turns out I was very adept at talking on the ham radio and navigating in the woods and starting a fire. And my partner that I had with, I didn't ask if I could use his name on the show, so I won't here. I'll just say, A, is this my partner A, was amazing, was fantastic. Here's the funny. I don't know if those of you who are not as into preparedness and don't have as many of the important items that were on the list for the American Contingency Adventure Challenge might think that this is funny. And those of you who are extremely prepared and would have been in the expert level might think I'm an idiot when I get ready to tell you. But And let me preface this. I am a very strong believer that excuses are reasons that could have been avoided. If you want to write down a quote from the show that you can take and utilize in other areas of your life, excuses are reasons that could have been avoided. So I'm not going to use my excuse that my life, in my real life over here with the master's degree and the clients and everything that I'm doing, by any stretch of the imagination, lets me off the hook for the fact that I showed up ill-prepared. But I showed up ill-prepared. Like, I brought a backpack that could basically hold a bunch of water. I didn't have my normal car, so my normal provisions that I would have had were stuck at the dealership where the car was getting fixed. And I just sort of was like, whatever I need to do when I get there, I'll figure it out. Well, even at the novice level, there's an expectation of certain equipment that you will show up with. And blessed be just how helpful and friendly everybody is here in the Southeast region, and I'm sure in other regions as well. But my direct experience was just how friendly and helpful everyone was. They lent me some fire starting kits, and one gentleman lent me his entire bag. It wasn't like his big bag. It was definitely more of a let's go take this into the woods bag. But there was a knife and a hatchet, and there was ways to start fire, and really cool things that were involved in this bag. And it was cool to get a chance to see what somebody who would consider themselves an expert in the preparation game, to see what all they would put in this bag. But to be clear, over the last 2 minutes, as I have described my initial arrival into this entire thing, I want to make sure it is stated out loud that I did not bring anything other than water, hiking shoes, and a change of clothes. And if you're going to go to an adventure challenge, I'm going to go ahead and throw it out there that there's going to be more preparation than just showing up with water and an extra pair of shoes and some clothing. Although, by all means, do that too. But also realize that a fire starting kit and a water filtration system and a tarp to turn into a shelter, and these things were on the website. And again, I let life just sort of envelop me, and by the time it was time to go, it was just let's throw things in the car and roll. So certainly I learned a lot because I wouldn't do that again. I can't wait for next year when I have an opportunity to participate as the intermediate level and show up with, my own supplies. But everybody was super helpful, and it was a little bit of a joke on that Friday night whenever everybody realized I didn't have anything. Didn't even have a pocket knife, guys. Like, it didn't even have a multi-purpose tool. And some of you may be like, well, why is this moron running the podcast? Because of that reason. I think that I can bring in a very attuned it's almost like my lack of knowledge helps me even more, because when I put together these episodes, I strive to make sure that I bring in a lot of really powerful information. And to a particular extent, a lot of this stuff is new to me. And so being able to bring it and present it to those of you who would consider yourself novices to intermediates, I think is extremely beneficial than potentially an expert talking about things that they've known about for years that you've never heard about, and some of that information going over your head. I bring in interviewees in order to bring in those experts who know more than I do, who might know more than you do, and have them be able to share with them and you what they know and why it's beneficial. And so it was really cool at the challenge. You roll up in there, and it's on this one dude's amazing property, and I'll just jump right into the challenge aspect of it. So because we were novices, our course had less than quote unquote obstacles, challenges to deal with. We needed to be able to utilize the ham radio, which I did find myself very adept at utilizing the walkie-talkie. And I've watched enough military television shows and movies that I felt like I knew how to be succinct in the knowledge that I was trying to say over the talkie, and then be able to overheard, things of that nature. So I found myself to be very adept at talking on the radio, and part of our challenge was that we had to tend to make believe injuries as if my partner had fallen down. So that was really cool, just to be able to think about what we would do in that situation if he did get bruised and scraped and his left arm was injured, and was it tender, was it cracked, was it fractured, any of those things, and be able to mend on that. There was an opportunity to barter with somebody who was up on the trail. My partner felt pretty confident that he was part of a murder team up in the woods looking to take things from people, and I erred on the side of his caution, although I did think that it was more of a bartering opportunity, which ultimately it did turn out to be. It was fun standing there trying to figure out between the two of us if this was a bartering opportunity or a life or death scenario with a murderer on the mountain. we called it back to home base. They were like, no, you got to make it through that guy. I was like, all right, cool. We got to barter with them. And, a lighter and a candle ultimately was what ended up being the going rate to move past this guy on the mountain. Then we got to filter water. Again, way to go, Big A, for showing up with a water filtration device that was there so that we could refill his bottle and have that opportunity to move through that station. And then we got to our final one, which was to start a fire and build an encampment, like a tent, just using what we had there and do it under 30 minutes because the storm was rolling in. And while I didn't mention this at the beginning, I will say this now as I start to talk about building the fire and building the encampment, is that when you go do these kind of events, I find it best to just really get into it to the point where whatever the scenario is that's being painted for you to maneuver through, again, we talk a lot about practicing your evacuation routines, whether it be for a storm or a potential fire in the house or a burglar coming in through the front, whatever those are, like really immerse yourself in the scenario and just treat it like it's a real thing. And I found at the very beginning when I sort of was just like, I'm Jesse walking in the mountains, listening to the person on the walkie-talkie tell us what we need to do next. Once we got to the part where Big A this scenario had him falling and hurting his arm, I really found I was like, you know what? I just get yourself more into it. And by doing that, you just take it on. And for those of you who've ever done any kind of plays when you were in high school or whatever, just get into the act, man. You're there to do it. Do it. And if you're going to practice evacuations or practice getting all your gear in the car because something nefarious is going on in your neighborhood, just role play it like it's really happening. And I promise you, your energy level changes. Those of your kids, your partner, your neighbors will change when it's like, no, this is what we're doing. For the next hour, we're going to act like a tornado is barreling through the other side of the neighborhood, and we've got 7 minutes. You get 7 minutes to get your stuff out of the house. Let's figure this out. No, wait, I forgot something. No, then you just forgot it. Sorry, Sparky's going to die because you didn't think about getting Sparky's to-go bag, and now we lose our family pet. Maybe next time you'll think ahead. Get into it. And when I got into it, I found the experience to be much more immersive and enjoyable, and it was absolutely a fantastic moving forward. Again, even with the bartering opportunity on the mountain, Big A was like, this could be a different situation where this guy's got a couple buddies and waiting to come at us. Do we want to be, getting murdered on the stage 2 of a 5-stage challenge? And no, that was not what I wanted. So I went in with it, and it was fantastic. And I said all of that to lead us to the fire shelter part. I have written extensively about how to make fires with the blogs. We've got our social media coordinator who does our Instagram, and she has put things up on there on the American Contingency page for our social media on how to build fires. Back when I was doing the social media, I remember putting together a whole video on how to build a fire. I've, again, written extensively on the blogs. Nothing compares to doing it yourself with a woods full of half wet and half dry materials 30 minutes before this scenario said a storm was going to come rolling through. And while, yes, the storm was just part of the scenario and not really going to happen, the immersive experience dictated that me and Big A treated it like there was a storm coming. And we had 30 minutes, and we didn't want to lose. I think there was a point system going on, and I ended up having to leave early, and I'll get into that towards the end of the show. I wasn't able to stay for the entire weekend experience due to some work issues, but I ultimately don't know if there was a point system, and if there was, I think we should probably have won if there was a point system, and maybe they even built some statues in our honor while we were there. I don't know. I don't know. I had to leave early, but the immersive experience called for a 30-minute time limit to build a shelter and a fire. And I took on the fire aspect of it because I had written so many blogs, and that was the one thing I was like, this is like when I knew about the AmCon challenge, whenever I told Tom I was going to show up, and I thought I was just going to be somebody who ran around and took pictures and got videos for various reasons that we wanted this to be captured on film. And he's like, I think you should participate. Well, I remember saying, if I'm participating, then I'm starting the fire because I've written so much about this, and I want to actually do it in the woods. Now, to be clear, I have started fires before. We have all been at a, I almost said a banquet, a camp out, a barbecue, something like that where there's a bonfire. And generally, I will take on the role of starting up the fire. I'm a huge fan. I love fire. I think it goes back to like our caveman days when fire meant warmth and cooked food and all the other things. Pretty sure that's why we don't need our appendix anymore, is because we stopped eating like semi to completely raw food. Point being is I wanted to be the one who started the fire, and Big A was more than cool with being the one who set up the shelter. And he had all that gear in his bag anyways. And right before I went up on the mountain, somebody had asked, could I start a fire? And the gentleman who had lent me his backpack, there was definitely a fire starting kit in there. But Mike Lott, who runs a lot of things, but specifically I know of his duties being the one who guides the regional coordinators in so many ways, and certainly in setting up each one of their regions' American contingency challenges. He played a pivotal role in all that. Dude's super friendly. I've met him a couple times when he's come up to Huntsville because he lives nearby. When I say nearby, it's like 3 or 4 hours, but he lives near enough that I've met him before, and he's been on the podcast. I think he was, again, in those early single-digit episodes. Well, he hands me over this really cool little baggie of stuff to start a fire, and it is some of the most inventive stuff. And I'm looking at this being like, I could put this together for like $4. And sure enough, that was what I ended up utilizing to start up the fire. Big A ended up knowing that hand sanitizer is quite flammable, so we squirted that on some of this like tightly wrapped hay type feeling stuff. Got that to light just by literally taking a lighter and setting a leaf on fire, and then got that up and running. Where I did notice more of a challenge to starting the fire than I had anticipated was I knew not to smother it. So I had dug out a hole basically with my hands, and the ground was wet enough to do this. I used the back of a hatchet to start the hole, and there was already like a really nice mound of mud and rock that was already around where I decided I chose the spot specifically because there was this really nice mound of soft mud that I could utilize as half of my circle. So then I just went ahead, used the back of the hatchet, got the other part of the circle going, and then just utilized all these rocks that I found in the area and in that mud pile to form the other side of the fire pit. And then I just took that soft mud and pushed it up and stacked it up. So I tightened up all the rocks utilizing mud. So when it was all said and done, it was probably about a 9-inch to 12-inch hole that I was able to start this fire in. I could have made it a little bit wider. Now, going over and doing my evaluation, my after-action report, certainly I could have made the hole a little bit bigger, because if it was going to maintain us for the entire night, we certainly are going to be looking for much bigger than I had originally built it. And what I also noticed is that my idea of sort of just utilizing the sides of the pit to hold the sticks up to get them to light so I wouldn't smother meant that I was using sticks that were a little bit longer and wider than I would have preferred. And ultimately, Big A had to come over and he's like, maybe we shift this to a TP instead of what you're doing, which is sort of like a cross pattern where all the sticks are just sort of angled at such a way that they're going over the fire rather than up. And he made a point of saying this, and again, as soon as he said it, I'm like, yep, I remember that from the blog, that fire likes to travel up. So if you build things as a TP, then the fire can travel up. It can engulf the entire stick of kindling, and when you have enough of those around, now you've got the whole thing going, and now you've got a much bigger fire that allows you to put the second sized twigs around it, again built in a TP. And by the time you get to that second, now you're looking at those third level sticks that are going to be much wider. They're going to be able to sustain the flame much longer, because when I was still at first level, I almost lost my flame. I almost lost it. And I ended up having to blow on it a lot in order to get it to come back. And that's when Big A stepped in with his TP idea, which again I'm pretty sure if you were to go back and read any of my fire starting blogs, that would have been like step 2 or 3 after dig hole and make sure that the fire won't spread into the rest of the woods. It would be get fire started and then build everything around it so that the fire can travel up instead of trying to get it to go across, which is what I had done. And again, it wasn't smothering it, but it wasn't working with the fire. It was trying to bend the fire to my will. And fire is much more amenable in its growth when you just follow its rules and not try to create your own rules. So it was a fantastic experience. The fire got going. I mean, it got going once we flipped the TP, and we was just ready to roll. Big A got the shelter set up by, doing his thing with the tarps and the ropes and the knots. And when it was all said and done, we got through, and we were really happy with us and just being able to start that fire. And again, this goes back to what we talk time and time and time again, that you can YouTube watch and you can blog read up and down the street till you're blue in the face, but nothing is going to take the place of actual experience. Like, it's locked into my head now, the steps that I went through, where I faltered, where I could have done better, where I would change the scenario. Even talking it out with you just now, realizing that the hole could have been wider, that the sticks and the teepees, that could have already been built, and then I could have just left a little opening that would have allowed me to get into where the flame was instead of starting the flame and then trying to build it up around with tiny little twigs. Just so many different things that once you've experienced it, your brain naturally will start to put together all the information you've watched and read and say, okay, well, now that I've done it, what was really beneficial? What is something I forgot? What is something that's not as important? And this is the point of going to events like this, is to experience things hands-on, to talk to other people about what they experience. Because the intermediate people had to help somebody with a broken leg, and I didn't have a chance to talk to any of the expert people, but I certainly know they probably didn't get to have their radio work the entire time. And I'm almost positive they had to start fires with everything being wet, even their fire starting equipment. So it's much more difficult on their end. But then again, if you're in that expert level, some of these people had backpacks, like they could have hiked into the back 40 and stayed there for 3 weeks and been fine. They were definitely not the ones showing up with just a backpack full of water, extra change of clothing, and shoes. So fantastic all around. I cannot stress enough. If you are already a member, next year, make sure you're there. If you went, by all means, send me an email, social media at AmericanContingency.com. I'd love to know your story. If you'd like to come on the podcast and discuss it, that would be great. You can always just go over and DM me in our membership site, and I'll check that, and I'll be able to communicate with you, even if it's just to tell me a cool story so that I could share it with the listeners. You don't have to come on at all. But there's practical benefits of this in-person learning, and we're going to get out of here on this, or at least soon. But one of the cool things that didn't necessarily expect, but it was a pleasant surprise, was as we were sitting there waiting for our turn to go up into the woods to do our challenge, Big A and I were sitting at a table that had these like 1 inch in diameter rods with a bunch of pieces of rope and like shoelaces there. And so we picked them up and just started, like, it was clearly like a knot tying practice area. And so not knowing any other knots other than like the one I used to tie my shoes, or, knot something so that you have to use like a sharp fork to get the knot to open up. One of the gentlemen across the way was like, here, let me show you this one knot. And I could not tell you the name of it right now, but it basically just is, take it over around the rod, and then it goes over the rope. It comes back around, and it goes underneath one of the pieces of rope that you had just wrapped over. And this thing is secure. It is not coming off. But yet, whenever you're ready to untie it, loosen it, it is just a simple push, pop, and it's done. And it was just so cool as we were sitting there, and then there was like a bowling knot and all these other knots that were getting thrown around, and everybody just started practicing knots around us. And it was just, what a cool experience, because we didn't say, hey, can somebody teach a knot? But they saw people who didn't know knots, they know knots, and they just said, hey, would you like to learn a really cool knot? I'm like, yes, I would. I came here to learn. Let's learn something. And so they showed the knots, and we got to learn knots, and it was a completely spontaneous opportunity to communicate with somebody within the American contingency world in a way that Zoom is just not going to provide. I did notice that once he started to teach me the first way, he's like, well, here, let me show you another way. And I was like, no. Let me learn this way and turn this into muscle memory and habit. And then I can learn another way. And I, again, don't know the name of the knot, but I promise you give me a stick and a piece of rope and I could redo this knot. Because I sat there and practiced it for a good 10, 15 minutes. Like if I said that I did this knot 50 times, that might be an understatement, because I wanted to put it to muscle memory. And I could definitely see where the benefits of utilizing this in multiple scenarios, whether it would be to tie the tarp to the string up in the woods in order to create our shelter, or whether it be on a boat, other opportunities when you're hiking, when you just need to combine, like tie a rope around something that you need it to be extremely firm, so that maybe you use it to get yourself to, get up to a tree and you want to climb it. And so somebody gets up there who's good at climbing, and they could put a couple ropes, they could create this knot, throw the rope down, and now somebody else could climb up. And when you get up there, you're easily able to loosen up the rope and take it and continue on your way up a tree. Like, just randomly throwing out scenarios, but it's the spontaneity of teaching and guiding and being there in this world that is second to none. And these are the practical benefits. Again, you can read about tying knots and starting a fire or building a shelter, but when you go out there, YouTube is not going to be able to help you figure everything out. YouTube's not going to help you barter with some grumpy dude on the side of the mountain, or be able to figure out what to do with your ham radio whenever the communication starts to fall apart. Like, it can give you tips, but doing over just learning, it is second to none. I will say that over and over and over and over again, that confidence comes from taking action. You can watch videos, you can read things, you can feel confident that if the time was nigh and you needed to be able to lay down some of these skills to keep yourself in a safe situation or help other people around you, you can certainly learn to say, okay, I got this, but till you actually do it. You don't realize how difficult that stuff Bear Grylls was doing on the TV. He's been doing it for years, and certainly I would follow that guy into the woods in a heartbeat. But it's those small little failures, like not making the TP with the sticks correctly, taking things from theory into actual experience, realizing that we could have used a bigger tarp or that the fire base could have been made bigger. You can read all the wilderness survival books you want, but that's not going to stop the raccoons from raiding your carefully packed snacks. You got to get out there. You got to realize what's going on. And the gear check. I looked through the entire backpack that gentleman lent me for this. Even when Mike Locke gave me his baggie of fire starting utensils, I made sure I went through that entire bag. I knew what I was going up there with. So when a scenario happened, I knew where to go inside that bag. I could definitely notice some opportunities where we were digging a little too much or had to take one too many items out of a backpack in order to get to the water filtration device or to get to the tarps. But again, you don't know that your backpack could be organized more efficiently until you get there and realize that the way it's currently organized is less effective as a different way. And no matter how many videos you watch, until you start digging through your bag looking for a lighter, do you realize this should have definitely been in a smaller pocket and way more close to the top. I can tell you all the studies in the world that practicing survival skills, even in low-stress environments, means that you're going to perform better in real-life situations when the stress is there. Studies, talks, research, this podcast, it only does so much until you step out there into the great unknown and just get to it. And then being able to come off that mountain and talk to people who've been doing this for a long time, listening to some of their advice, seeing what you just experienced, and then deciding that you're going to do it, more desirably the next time. That's the way I want to behave, and not just preparedness in these adventure challenges, but in life in general. Like, I want to take action, and I want the experience points that come from doing things. I also want to surround myself with people who want to learn and want to teach and want to guide and want to be led, so that we can all learn together, so that wherever up there, like, there's some of these people that were at this challenge, their backpacks were 40, 50 pounds, and they were more than adept at carrying it. I was like, wherever that person's going, I'm following them. And we'll close up on this part. And I know I said I was going to close up, but we're coming up on 30. Physical fitness is extremely important. And right now I'm walking on my walking treadmill just to get my miles in for the day, because of the way that my rest of my day will play out. I cannot stress enough how important the physical fitness aspect is. Regardless of how muscular or whatever you weigh or whatever that might be in your own individual life, put yourself in situations where you have to push yourself past the threshold of what you think you can actually achieve. And regardless of your weight or your height or your gait or any of these other things, if you can maneuver your body up and down a mountain in these kind of situations, regardless of whether somebody else thinks that you should weigh less or be stronger, you know that you can manage yourself. And that's certainly something I always want to know about myself. If I'm up in the mountains and we're hiking, I want to be able to carry my own weight. metaphorically and in reality. Like, I want to be that person who's got the energy and the gumption to help, and also can carry my own weight. And if somebody were to get injured, I could take on 10 or 15 of their pounds, because I have that kind of physical fitness that allows me to expend some of my energy for the needs of somebody else. So I just thought that's something really important, is because we can get locked into this sedentary lifestyle, or we just don't have time to work out, or we don't have time to go outside and be active. But when you want to be active, when you need your body to be able to have the dexterity and the flexibility and just the agility to be able to do these things in life, you want to be able to get up there and perform. And so if there's a part of you that thinks that you might have difficulty performing in an outdoor challenge, or even potentially in a suburban or urban challenge, that could be the scenario we set next year, for all I know. You want to know that physically, emotionally, mentally, you have put yourself in situations to test your perseverance, to test your resiliency. And I cannot stress enough that when you're ready to prepare and grow and share by building these skills that I've literally been talking about the entire time, American Contingency is that network. Confidence, self-assuredness, resiliency. This is what we bring to the table. What we ask of you is action and activity with the other members, and the ability to show up and play full out whenever we put these events on, because a make-believe scenario is a real-life event next week. Ask anybody in North Carolina, South Carolina, North Georgia, or Florida who's gone through the devastations of multiple hurricanes over the last few weeks, is that you don't know necessarily when it's going to come, even though you can get a pretty strong indication, according to the weather people, of when it will arrive. But once it starts to coming down, you don't really know how you're going to be pushed. And blizzards in the Northeast, or earthquakes in the Southwest, or downpours and floods in the Mississippi River Delta. So many things can happen. You want to be able to know that you can grab a bag, you can get out there, you can protect your family, you can protect yourself, and you never have to say you're sorry because you didn't think ahead. And you can't be expected to have everything, but you can definitely prepare yourself to have a lot. So that's my story. I'm sticking to it. Love the American Contingency Adventure Challenge. This is absolutely fantastic. Cannot say enough about it. Next year, if yours has already happened and you missed out on a chance to do it in your region, then by all means, be on the lookout for next year's. If yours is coming up and you haven't signed up and you can still do that, you should talk to your regional coordinator and see if there's still space available. By all means, if you've already signed up and you're ramming and jamming, can't wait to get out there and show all your awesomeness, you might want to bring a couple extra things just in case some dope like me shows up with nothing but a pair of hiking shoes and a gallon of water, because it never hurts to be so prepared that you have resources to share. And when you're ready to prepare and grow and share, and I've needed all three of those last weekend, by building the skills, the network, and the confidence to be prepared for whatever comes next, join us at AmericanContingency.com. We're here when you're ready. We'll keep the fire going for you. I'll start it so you can find your way. Talk to you next time, everyone. Bye-bye.